Well, today we have Tim based in Grand Rapids, but Tim and his company Symposia Labs have been longtime supporters of Lansing Marketing Hackers. So if you've been a part of the group for a while, then you have seen Tim virtually in the last couple of years, maybe popping in to say hello as a sponsor. He has typically provided our food and all sorts of things. So we love Tim and his team. And today he's going to be talking to us about his top trends for this year. So I'm going to pass it over to Tim and let him dive in. Tim, we're excited to have you.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see you guys. Thank you for coming. I'm excited to try to talk through some trends today. So I think almost every single year for the last 8 years, I've done some sort of like trends piece. And I would say this year was the hardest, probably because it seems like most of the trends that people are talking about are either in one of two categories. One I would call kind of clickbaity, like ChatGPT is going to take your job and change the world forever. That's a fun clickbaity one. And then I would say the other category that a lot of the trends I've seen fall into is basically just like, I think that was a trend last year, and the year before, and the year before, and the year before. I don't know if that really counts as a trend anymore, as much as it's just something that's happening. So I'm going to kind of approach the conversation from that perspective. I think probably the trend that I'm personally most excited about that we won't get into too much today probably is automation. So although I think like ChatGPT is way overhyped to a certain degree, that trend of like automation I think in marketing is really, really intriguing and is definitely going to shape the industry in the next few years, more so than before. So I wanted to kind of pose a question. Basically, what can we do less of? Because I don't know about y'all, but after the last 8 years of being in marketing, I'm pretty tired of being told to do more. And it seems like that is the general consensus, right? Like, oh, you should be on this platform, you should be on this platform. Well, what if we looked at it differently? What if we just thought about how to downsize? Doesn't that sound kind of nice? It sounds nice to me. I think when it comes to platforms, that fewer is better to a certain degree, but that's, of course, just my opinion. The thing that I most hate in the entire world right now that still seems to be trending somehow is cold emails. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed that what used to be cold emails in just like my Gmail account are now cold emails in my LinkedIn account and my DMs in my Instagram and Snap and so forth. So many people are using those generated like, cold, hey, give me a call, here's a link to my calendar, that I have continually upped my game on defense, and now I like erase people from the earth when they send me a cold email. I find their like social media handles and I block them, and I try to never ever hear from their brand again. I would love everyone to stop doing cold emails, but that's just that was my soapbox. So when we think of platforms, of course there's so many out there, email just being one of the ones that comes fastest to mind just because I use it quite a bit. I think for us anyways, the way that we're approaching this, and our audience is like B2B, so you guys have probably different audiences and would not necessarily need to take the exact same approach. But for us, we're paring it down to basically like 3 platforms that we want to be on. We're doing LinkedIn, we're begrudgingly doing Instagram because it's still pretty valuable. And then we're starting to push, although we haven't really gotten there yet, we're starting to push more to TikTok. which is the one that I'm sometimes most excited about, sometimes least excited about. It depends on the day. But I think Facebook is the one that is easiest to like cross off right now for a lot of industries, unless you're doing e-commerce, in which case there's still a lot of value in Facebook's advertising platform. But getting rid of a few platforms, I think, is a really wise idea. Have any of you guys deleted a social media platform from your brand? Okay, what'd you delete?
Instagram.
Yes, why'd you delete Instagram? I want to delete Instagram.
Lack of bandwidth.
Yeah,
I'm a department of one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I usually think about it as like each platform is a minimum of 5 to 8 hours of investment a week. So if you're a department of one, that time doesn't exist at that level. So I think that's wise. Who else deleted something? What'd you delete?
Twitter.
Yes. Oh, I forget about Twitter sometimes.
Exactly why I deleted it.
Yeah. Yeah. I got like excited about it when Elon started ruining it. You know, like I just wanted to get out my popcorn, but then I forgot about it again. Although I am scared that Twitter plays such a large part in like the way news is spread. But that's another story. Okay, who else deleted something? There's one more person, I thought. No? Okay. Delete something. Twitter, that's a great one to delete. I forgot about Twitter. Which is so sad, because it was like Twitter was my original social media network. That was like the first app I ever logged into and fell in love with. So when we think about types of content, I usually think of it as divided into these 6 categories. So educational, inspirational, interactive. When I think interactive, I think like gamification content where like if I do this, maybe I'll get some sort of prize or something. Connecting, when I think connecting, I think nostalgia, employee stories, anything that helps paint that like human picture of the brand behind the scenes. Promotional, of course, we're all familiar with that, I'm sure, as that's kind of the easiest one to think of. Newsworthy, and then entertaining. We do a lot with like newsjacking headlines. I think there's a lot of value in that, although it's gotten harder to pull off, and it could be kind of risky. And I think at the end of the day, more so than ever before, people want to laugh and smile when they engage with content. There's so much content out there that it's almost overwhelming. And I think that one of the things that I'm seeing as a trend worth pursuing is, very simply put, quality over quantity. When I go on a brand's social media accounts and I see like a screenshot of this here and like, you know, fuzzy images here, but they're posting like every day, right? Like good for them, they're doing the SEOs, that's so cool. For me, personally, I think quality is of much more value. I am unsubscribing from brands left and right that don't practice quality in their content. And I'm sure you guys could probably relate a little bit. Moving away from, I think, kind of like the hype, if you will, about, you know, here's a new platform beyond this, or, oh, you should be doing more video. Of course you should be doing more video. We've been saying that for like 5 years now, I feel. And there's a reason that businesses such as Paul's are continually exploding, right? But moving away from some of that, these are the 3 things that I believe are most intriguing in the marketing space right now. Groups, events, community. Groups, when I think of groups, I think of Lansing Marketing Hackers. It's a great example of a group, pretty front and center one. People are looking for others that are interested in the same things as them, I think more so than ever before. And to me, that's just a natural outcome of COVID, right? We all did like the isolation journey, and it was super fun to only talk to ourselves and our cats for like 3 years, but we're past that now, and I think people want to engage with other human beings. Events, I think, are kind of a natural outcome of that too, especially IRL events. There's, I think, quite a large vacuum from the last few years, and people are really excited just to like, holy shit, there's another human being like in the world, and they're here. This is so wild. And to me, separate from those two things would be community. I think that in many spaces, one of the most exciting things that is happening is people are moving away from social media platforms such as LinkedIn, and they're moving towards communities like Discord communities or Slack communities, if you're more familiar with Slack. To me, those are really, really exciting because in a way it's kind of privatization of social media to a certain degree. I think there's a lot of value for brands that are trying to create those sorts of communities and capture those communities, and they're really easy to get wrong. I find that quite a few of the communities that I've joined over the years like end up just, nothing comes of it. But the ones that I'm in that are like really thriving are so meaningful, and they usually combine a little bit of text and video and IRL all together. Probably the most famous example of someone who's pulled off a social media community, for better or worse, politics aside, right? Donald Trump. When he came out with his private social media network and got so many users so quickly, that's when I really started like paying attention to it. And unfortunately, some of the examples of the communities are like really terrible, which I suppose is inspiring in the very least as far as like, oh, let's not do it that way. The other one that's more recent is like Andrew Tate. Not a big fan of misogyny personally, but if you look at the way he created a social media community and then leveraged that, there's certainly something to learn from it. I wish I had like a really positive example off of my head, top of my head, but I can only think of like the bad communities, which is, I don't know what that says about me, but I personally am most into Discord. I've spent the last year and a half working on Discord communities and like researching them, and I think that platform is really thriving right now. Okay, so the other trend that I want to get into here, in the last few years, more and more and more, I see these phrases, and marketers are so good at coming up with phrases that don't mean anything. We're really talented at that. But I see these phrases, people-centric marketing and purpose-driven marketing, over and over and over again. And I've started wondering, like, what the hell does that even mean? And are people really doing that, or do their brands just want you to feel like they're doing that? And what's the difference, right? So I am of the opinion that especially with Gen Z coming up, the values and beliefs and actions of an organization or brand are more important than they've ever been before. I think that the data suggests, by and large, that people are making really important decisions about what they buy, where they buy it from, who they work for, all of this value-centric sort of approach to life, right? Therefore, I believe that people-focused marketing is not just a trend. I think it's the way to actually run an organization. Having said that, I think there's disconnect. Like I see a lot of questionable things, like when you see, they're firing that person because of A, B, C, D, but over here they said they value compassion. Fascinating. Those things don't seem to go hand in hand, in my opinion anyways, but yeah. So I think, especially again, kind of coming out of COVID, we're looking for brands that are compassionate. We're looking for brands that can practice emotional intelligence. And we want them to put their money where their mouth is, not just to like put a picture of the non-white people on the website, but to like actually pursue diversity and inclusion in the way that they're approaching hiring and retention. So it's my hope that it's not just a fad, but I do cringe a lot when I see the phrase, even though I think we have it on our site too. It's still kind of cringy sometimes. There is so much talk about like, you need more of this content and you should be on this platform and here's like 50 more things you could do to make your SEO better and this and that. I think now more than ever, there's an opportunity to kind of re-examine some of the basics, if you will, or the fundamentals. And two fundamental pieces of marketing from my experience in the digital space are your website, user experience, and then of course, local search. So taking those one by one, website user experience, oh my goodness. Marketers love to ruin a great website. They're really good at it. I feel like most of the time I get onto sites these days and it's like, oh, I've got to close out of this pop-up that wants me to join a mailing list. And then no, I got to minimize like the chat bot that's asking me if I can talk to it about something that I don't want to talk to it about. It's like by the time I actually get to do what I wanted to do on the damn website, I'm mad at whoever made it. And it's a natural outcome, right? Because we've put marketers, or as marketers, I suppose I should say, as marketers, we're put in these roles constantly where we're being demanded to generate return on investment, right? Like, well, you spent $50 on TikTok ads. What did you get out of it? You spent this on that. What did you get out of it? So we're naturally, kind of desperately at times, clinging to like anything I can do to prove that I matter, that my job is valuable. And I think that's come out in our websites more so than ever before. Most of the websites I see these days just like, I can't even get to the information that I want to get to. We build websites without doing the most important and simplest and obvious thing, which is to go talk to the people that are actually using the website. How many of you have seen a website created in the last few years without user persona research or user interviews? I know I have. Most of them are created without that input. And to me, this matters. It's a fundamental worth ranting about because everything else you do in marketing, for the most part these days, drives to your website. So why aren't we taking care of our house before we invite people over to it? Separately, 8 years ago, local search was like Yext and Yelp and Yahoo Local, right? Google has, of course, as we all know, been, for better or worse, the behemoth of local search for the last decade now. But there's a shift happening, and I think it's a really intriguing one. Users of social media platforms are discovering that if you go to like Asheville, North Carolina, instead of Googling restaurants, you could just go on TikTok and search. And now you're getting videos of what people are eating. You're getting content. You're getting like from the actual people at the restaurant, a little bit more trustworthy to a certain degree, I think. So for me, I believe that search is moving past Google. And that's not to say that your Google listing doesn't matter. Of course it does. But if you're not creating content on platforms like TikTok or Instagram with what people are searching for in mind, you're really missing out on an opportunity. And just like on Google, you can pad it with keywords. You can try to optimize it so that they're going to find it. All of those things still apply, but I don't have to leave the app now, which I think is a really big deal. Here is my personal favorite conversation. And it's a little bit in the weeds, I suppose, depending on your perspective from a philosophy standpoint. But should we be talking more about the ethics of social media, data retention, data privacy, etc.? I think that we should. The college that I graduated from, I love this so much, just lost like 500,000 email addresses to a small little hack, and they had to email out their entire alumni database and all of those other things that come forth from that. And like those stories, I think are almost so frequent that if you're like me, I've kind of like glazed over, like, oh, another person has my social security number. That's cool. Maybe they'll buy something cool on the dark web with it. I don't know. That sounds kind of exciting. I do think, though, that in our rush to collect information, it's easy to forget that we need to also protect it, and that there's nothing more damaging to your brand's reputation than literally selling out your users by exposing them in such ways. I also think that social media ethics beyond like data privacy is a trend that I see younger marketers, so I have the privilege, just because of the role that I have, of working with a lot of like college students, 15 years younger than me, as much as I don't like to admit it. And something that I'm very intrigued by in their mindset right now is that the brand that they work for needs to often, in their minds, represent their values. Kind of back to that earlier conversation a little bit. But I just did a post on LinkedIn and I was blown away by the results. I love those polls. Like I could just do a poll every day, but then I would be one of those people and I would have to hate myself. So I try to keep it to like once a month. But I did a poll and the question was, are marketers responsible or accountable for the values of the organizations that they do marketing for? I don't know what you would think the results would be, but I was quite fascinated. Most people, the majority of people, what do you think? Did they say yes or no? What's your human decency catalog today? Most people said no. Brands that I represent are not necessarily something that I'm accountable for. But it was trending towards about a 50-50 split when I last looked at it. And I would suspect that if I looked through the individuals and did a demo breakdown, that it would actually be an age split to a certain degree. I would expect the younger demographic to be answering yes, they should be held accountable to the companies that they're doing marketing for, at least more so than the other demographic. I'm curious, on this one specifically, what social media ethics means to you. Not that this is like the only purpose of our conversation, but like, do you guys have any examples in the last year of a moment where you've had to make a hard decision about what you're posting and why? Maybe yes, maybe no. Man, that's exciting. That's good. It probably like happened, you know, you just don't remember it. It could be challenging sometimes to remember. I'm going to plug this in before it dies, because that would be very sad. So when it comes to privacy, especially, that users are more concerned than they've ever been before about, like, are they actually on this list? Do they opt into this list? Or are they just getting spammed? And for us, we solve that with HubSpot, which is just a CRM that helps with that sort of stuff. But there's a lot of other tools out there, like Salesforce. There's a million others as well. What do you guys use to store your customer information? Like where, if I give you my email address right now, where does it go? MailChimp. MailChimp, okay. Ah, fun. Did you pick that?
Well, it's such a great question too, Tim, because not to get off on a whole different topic of conversation, but with the LastPass breach last year.
Oh my gosh.
Oftentimes, like for agencies or even for you when you're like storing all of your passwords for your business or client data or whatever you're storing, you know, here we have a perfect situation of one of the most reputable, you know, companies out there, LastPass, that had a breach that essentially, if they're like, oh yeah, by the way, check out our blog, which then says that like everything was compromised, and it's like, wait, what?
Mm-hmm.
And then are we then left in this position of being liable if someone hacks into your company's Facebook and starts doing things with it? Like, where does that leave you? Where does that leave us?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And how many of us have really had those conversations with our teams or thought about storage of data? Or you think about it so far as to say, okay, well, I use LastPass and everything's secure.
Mm-hmm.
And then something like that happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like a certain beautiful irony when the password protector gets hacked and all the passwords leak. I always think LastPass's hacks are really funny. I think they've been hacked like 3 times now. But 1Password is my personal favorite storage tool for passwords, but I don't know if our team actually enjoys it as much as I do. I just love it because it tells me so much information that I don't need to know. It's kind of entertaining. But yeah, I think it's easy to get distracted by all of the different headlines that are out there right now about you should do this, you should try this. And I think as a marketer that it's honestly harder than it ever has been before, which is saying something, to figure out how to like focus on the things that actually matter. And even more challenging to decide what actually matters. And I find deciding what actually matters to be easiest to do on a per situation basis, which makes me actually hate a lot of what I see written about trends, because I think sometimes it can be quite damaging. Just because you can do something differently doesn't mean that you should be doing something differently. And on that note, I think one of the most intriguing trends when you think about like the way data is collected is a movement back to snail mail. So something that we've been doing because we have the capability now with HubSpot, instead of just collecting your information and sending you more emails, we're starting to integrate back with snail mail, which is something I, honest to God, like never would have thought that I would say 8 years ago when I first started out in this space. My opinion was that all print was going to be dead forever. Hallelujah, amen. But I think as a marketer, you have to get past the trend headlines and you have to think about like, where are the things that are easy to do that other people are just not bothering to do? And to me, that comes back to like the most important trend of all. We talked about user experience. Well, I think that's just a component of customer experience. And I don't really love the word customer, so you could probably replace that with something else. But every single interaction I have with you sure as hell better make me love you, because my inbox is fuller than it's ever been before. And I have a million people that could give me the same content that you're trying to give me. So you better be doing something to stand out. And sometimes I think the thing that is easiest to do to stand out is to go where there's less noise. And that's why, even though we're focused on digital, we've started doing snail mail again. And I'm finding it to be like really valuable just to double down on those sorts of programs that are more hands-on, if you will. Sending gifts, sending cards, all these sorts of things that I think personally I had just forgotten about. People are eating that shit up. right? Because no one else is doing it. The only stuff they're getting in their mailbox anymore is something from who knows what, right? So to me, personalization is also a part of that. Like, as a marketer, it's been so easy in the last few years to focus on scale. And that's something that I'm guilty of. Making content with scale in mind can be like really fun. And by that, what I mean is like, oh, it's not that I want 20 people to see it. It's that I want it to go viral, right? I want as many people to see it as possible, which then kind of will naturally dumb down the messaging because I'm going to be afraid to offend this group or that group by saying something that they don't believe. Personalization to me is embracing what the brand actually stands for. And I think the brand is the most important piece. It always has been, but it was easy to forget it for a while. More so than ever before, though, the relationship with the brand and the story that that brand is telling, I think, is the most central component of marketing. And it's harder than it ever used to be, at least in my opinion, to not enter into like political discussion. And I'm not one to celebrate grandstanding or creating division because I don't think that that furthers the conversation. But if brands are afraid to post about something like DEI because they're going to lose 20% of their customers, maybe they should lose those customers. Maybe those customers deserve to be lost. That would be my opinion anyways. I'm trying to get more and more loud, if you will, with like what the brand says, what it does, and what it unapologetically stands for, as much as watering it down might be safer at times. So I'd be curious to hear from you guys. I wasn't sure how big of a group it would be, but I'd be curious to hear from you, like, what trends are you seeing? This is a fun and rare opportunity to actually hear other marketers say what they think they're seeing. What trends do you feel like you're most excited about or most interested in or most intrigued by this year, besides ChatGPT? Sorry if I took that one away.